when Prince Michael of Kent unexpectedly summoned Princess Catherine to a secluded chamber beneath Windsor. Whispers rippled through the palace walls. Few even knew the royal vault still existed, a vault sealed since Queen Mary's reign, said to guard jewels tied to the monarchy's bloodline oath. But that night, a door long forbidden opened, and the one person denied entry was none other than Queen Camilla herself. Before we go deeper into what this really means for the royal family, make sure to subscribe so you don't miss a single update. The echoes of that night would soon travel far beyond the stone corridors of Windsor. For decades, the royal vault had been shrouded in secrecy, its key guarded by generations of royal custodians, each sworn to silence, each answerable only to the crown's conscience. But this time, the custodian was not a distant servant or ceremonial guardian. It was Prince Michael of Kent himself, one of the few living royals still bound by the oaths of the old monarchy. His decision to open the vault wasn't mere curiosity, it was a statement, a quiet, deliberate act that questioned the very hierarchy of royal legitimacy. The royal vault was more than a collection of relics. Within its silent depths lay items said to define the spirit of the monarchy itself. Jewels, letters, insignias, and the ancient Oath of Continuity, a handwritten testament allegedly signed by Queen Mary. The document dictated that the vault's contents would forever remain in the possession of those who carried unbroken devotion to the crown's sanctity. For centuries, that phrase had been left open to interpretation, but on this night, its meaning took human form in the shape of Catherine, not through bloodline alone, but through quiet grace and steadfast loyalty. As Catherine walked into the vault under Michael's guidance, the atmosphere shifted. It was said that he greeted her not with titles but with reverence, speaking of the spirit of the realm rather than the politics of the throne. In that moment, a royal bond was forged, one built not on power, but on preservation. The chamber, cold and dimly lit, was said to hum with the weight of centuries, and when its heavy doors closed behind them, an invisible line was drawn between the monarchy's past and its uncertain future. Camilla, meanwhile, had long sought access to the vault since her coronation. For her, entry meant legitimacy, a symbolic acceptance into the unbroken chain of queens who had come before her. Yet every request she made was quietly dismissed by the custodian's office, each reply citing protocol and preservation. What she didn't know was that Prince Michael had already made his decision one rooted in tradition rather than title. To him, the vault could not be opened by authority alone. It had to be opened by conviction. And while Camilla's reign had reshaped the modern monarchy, it had not yet earned the vault's silent blessing. Within the palace, these decisions sparked quiet unrest. Courtiers loyal to Camilla began to whisper that Prince Michael had overstepped his authority, reviving outdated customs to undermine the Queen's influence. Others, especially those close to William and Catherine, saw his actions as an act of guardianship, a defense of the monarchy's soul against the dilution of its heritage. The conflict was no longer about objects locked behind iron doors. It was about what those objects meant. The vault represented purity of intention, and its keeper had just chosen whom he believed embodied it best. The meeting between Catherine and Michael remained private, but what followed was unmistakable. In the weeks after, her presence at royal engagements carried a quiet strength that unsettled many. To those watching closely, there was something almost symbolic in her composure, a sense that she now bore a secret too profound to share. The royal vault, once a myth whispered through corridors, had become the new battleground for royal legitimacy. And as its story began to spread, so did speculation. What had she seen? What had she been told? And why had Camilla been kept away? The vault's reopening was no mere formality. It was an awakening of old vows. For Prince Michael, the act was both duty and defiance, a reminder that the monarchy's roots ran deeper than crowns or titles. And for Catherine, it marked the beginning of a transformation she hadn't sought but could no longer avoid. The door had opened, yes, but so had the floodgates of consequence. But as word of Catherine's secret visit leaked through royal corridors, the question began to burn. What exactly had she been shown inside that vault that the new queen was forbidden to see? By dawn, Queen Camilla was no longer patient. Palace aides describe her storming into Clarence's house with a fury rarely seen since Charles's accession. For Camilla, the vault wasn't about jewels, it was about validation. Denied access meant denied legitimacy, a direct challenge to her standing as queen, and she knew exactly who had orchestrated this royal humiliation, Prince Michael himself. The storm within her was not born overnight. For years, Camilla had fought to be recognized not just as Charles's consort, but as the rightful bearer of the crown's continuity, a battle waged against centuries of tradition and whispers of disapproval. The vault had become her unspoken test. To be granted entry would have symbolized acceptance, not just by the family, but by history itself. Yet when she learned that Catherine had been permitted access while she had been denied, it was more than an insult. It was a declaration that she would forever remain an outsider to the monarchy's spiritual core. Her voice, sharp and trembling with indignation, echoed through the drawing room as she confronted the keeper of royal collections. She demanded to know who had authorized Catherine's entry, who had made the decision to exclude her, and why the so-called guardian of royal tradition, Prince Michael, had taken it upon himself to act above the Queen's will. The keeper, pale and hesitant, could only mutter about protocols and the custodian's discretion. But those words only deepened her fury. Protocols meant boundaries, and boundaries meant mistrust. To Camilla, that was intolerable. Behind closed doors, courtiers exchanged nervous glances. They had seen the Queen's anger before, but this time it burned differently. It was personal. For Camilla, the vault represented something far beyond royal possessions. It symbolized a bloodline's inner sanctum, a place where devotion and worth were measured not by coronation, but by the spirit one carried. And to be locked out was to be told, in unspoken terms, that her love for Charles, her sacrifices, her decades of endurance, were still not enough. Charles, seated quietly by the window, said nothing. His silence struck her harder than any: denial. The man who had fought to make her queen, who had defied both public opinion and palace resistance, now sat in resignation as his wife raged against the invisible chains of heritage. It was not indifference that silenced him, it was weariness. He knew that some doors in this family could never be forced open, and his refusal to intervene only confirmed Camilla's deepest fear, that perhaps even he understood the vault's true symbolism, that it was never meant for her. In her anger, she accused Catherine of manipulation. She believed the princess had carefully aligned herself with the monarchy's elder guardians, winning their loyalty with humility and deference, while quietly positioning herself as the moral successor to the late Queen Elizabeth. To Camilla, it was a masterstroke of quiet rebellion, one that weaponized grace against authority. Her frustration was not merely envy. It was the sting of realizing that Catherine had achieved what she could not: reverence without demand. Rumors began to swirl of an unwritten decree dating back to Queen Mary, one that restricted the vault's treasures to the blood descendants of the old Windsor line. Though unverified, the mere mention of it sent shockwaves through the royal households. If true, it meant that Camilla, despite her crown, could never cross that threshold. When Prince Michael was asked to comment, his reply was brief, almost chilling in its restraint: "Access must be earned, not demanded." Those words reached Camilla within hours, and according to those close to her, she fell into a long, silent stare, the kind that carries both disbelief and resignation. But deep down, she refused to surrender. She saw in Catherine not just competition, but the embodiment of an old royal ideal that had excluded her for decades. Yet as her fury consumed the palace halls, Catherine herself remained hauntingly still. There was no retaliation, no comment, no visible reaction, only silence. And in that silence, a message was forming. And while Camilla's temper ignited through the palace halls, Catherine remained hauntingly quiet until her own message arrived at Prince Michael's office the next morning. Unlike the rage that consumed Camilla, Catherine's response came wrapped in serenity. A handwritten note, sealed with her personal crest, simply thanked Prince Michael for reminding the crown where its roots truly lie. To outsiders, It was politeness, but to royal insiders, those words struck deep. They hinted that Catherine had seen something sacred, something that changed how she viewed both duty and destiny. There was no press statement, no visible defiance, only silence. Yet that silence spoke louder than any royal proclamation. Catherine's grace had become her weapon, quiet, composed, and devastatingly effective. Within days of her visit to the vault, those who had dismissed her as the modern duchess molded for diplomacy began to see something different. There was an unfound aura of calm authority about her, as though she carried within her something ancient, something she could not quite put into words. To the untrained eye, she was the same, poised, measured, smiling, but those within palace walls felt it. A subtle shift, a deeper assurance that unnerved even the most seasoned courtiers. When the note reached Prince Michael, it was said he paused for a long moment before reading it aloud to one of his senior aides. He reportedly murmured, "She understands," and returned the letter to its envelope. No royal order followed, no reply was sent. But for the few who witnessed the exchange, it was clear Catherine's words had struck a chord. It wasn't gratitude alone, it was acknowledgement. She had recognized the weight of what she had been shown, and unlike others before her, she carried it with quiet humility rather than entitlement. In the days that followed, something extraordinary began to unfold. During public engagements, sharp-eyed observers noticed subtle but unmistakable changes in her attire. A brooch of intricate vintage design appeared on her lapel, one not seen since the era of the late Queen Mother. A pair of sapphire earrings, thought to have been locked away since the mid-century, gleamed softly beneath her hair. Each appearance seemed to whisper a message that no press release could confirm. Catherine now bore the legacy of those who came before her, not through decree, but through trust. The media took notice almost immediately. Headlines speculated whether the Princess of Wales had been granted access to sacred heirlooms within the royal vault, the same vault from which Queen Camilla had been denied entry. Tabloids called it the ultimate symbol of royal loyalty, while palace insiders spoke in hushed tones about a transfer of heritage. The public, already enamored with Catherine's grace, began to rally behind her with renewed affection. To them, she wasn't simply a princess, she was the embodiment of continuity in a monarchy fractured by transition. Inside the palace, however, that same grace stirred unease. Staff loyal to Camilla whispered that Catherine was quietly asserting dominance under the guise of humility. They watched her growing influence with suspicion, even fear, especially after one unsettling incident. The portrait of the late Queen Mother, once displayed prominently in Camilla's study, was removed without explanation. In its place hung a floral tapestry, soft but symbolic. To royal watchers, it felt like a silent reordering of hierarchy, an unspoken reminder that Catherine's connection to the old monarchy ran deeper than titles or ceremonies. Prince William's reaction was equally telling. Though he never publicly commented, those close to him described a quiet protectiveness that bordered on defiance. He shielded Catherine from gossip, refused to engage in conversations about the vault, and limited his public appearances alongside certain senior Perth royals. For him, this was not just about his wife, it was about the integrity of his lineage, the future that would one day rest in their children's hands. He knew the storm gathering behind palace walls could not be ignored forever. And yet, Catherine remained composed, untouched by the noise. While Camilla's frustration spilled into every whispering corridor, Catherine's silence became her statement, a declaration of strength through restraint. Her calm unnerved those who thrived on conflict, for they could not read her. Was she simply being dignified, or was she quietly orchestrating a reawakening of the monarchy's true spirit? Her letter had been simple, her words few, but their impact immense. What she had seen in the vault was never spoken of, not even to William. But whatever truth she carried, it was changing the tone of the palace itself. Camilla's fury had left cracks in the monarchy's image, but Catherine's quiet response filled those cracks with poise. It was as though she had inherited not jewels, but conviction, the kind of quiet faith that once defined queens long before her time. But while Catherine embodied grace, the whispers of what she now possessed and what Camilla was denied began spiraling into something far darker. Among the treasures of the vault lay the crown of integrity, a long-lost diadem Queen Mary once vowed would rest only upon a heart of unbroken devotion. Legend said whoever bore it symbolized the monarchy's truest continuity. Now, insiders claimed Catherine had been shown and possibly granted the diadem itself. To Camilla, it was more than betrayal. It was an erasure of everything she had fought to legitimize. The vault was never merely a collection of riches, it was a mirror of royal morality. Every jewel, every relic within its walls, was bound by vows made long before the modern monarchy even took shape. And at the center of that mythic collection stood 3 items said to define the very spirit of the crown of integrity, Elizabeth's whisper tiara, and Queen Mary's personal sapphire ring. Each piece carried not just beauty, but a story, a lineage of loyalty, sacrifice, and truth. Together, they formed what the old custodians once called the Covenant of Purity. For centuries, they remained untouched, preserved in silence. Until now, whispers began spreading through palace circles that during Catherine's private meeting with Prince Michael, she had not only been shown the vault, but had been invited to touch one of the sacred relics. It was said that as the crown of integrity was lifted from its case, Michael uttered words few understood, an invocation about duty and faith. Days later, a quiet frenzy erupted when an anonymous source suggested that Catherine had been privately photographed wearing one of the vault's heirlooms, possibly Elizabeth's whisper tiara, during an archival preservation session. The rumor alone was enough to send shockwaves through every royal office. If true, it meant something unprecedented had occurred. The crown's guardian had chosen his successor, and she was not the reigning queen. Behind the curtain of ceremony, this revelation reopened questions the monarchy had avoided for generations. Prince Edward, known for his pragmatism, reportedly voiced concern that reviving ancient loyalties could fracture the institution's unity. To him, the monarchy's survival depended on evolution, not ancestral mystique. But others disagreed. Senior historians invoked Queen Victoria's own writings, the Royal Trust Covenant, a document believed to define how such heirlooms were to be preserved and passed down only to those whose hearts reflect the crown's original light. Those words, buried for over a century, now re-emerged like prophecy fulfilled. Meanwhile, Camilla's supporters wasted no time countering the narrative. Leaks began flooding sympathetic papers, framing the event as an outdated gesture of favoritism, a relic of a bygone monarchy where bloodlines ruled over merit. But their outrage had an unintended effect. It gave life to the very myth they hoped to bury. The public, captivated by the story of hidden crowns and secret oaths, began to see Catherine not just as a royal figure, but as the spiritual heir of Elizabeth herself. The symbolism was too powerful to contain. Every headline, every rumor became another spark, fanning the fire of intrigue surrounding her. And yet, beneath the glamour of royal whispers lay a far deeper truth. The heirlooms had never been about possession. They were about continuity, a test of devotion disguised as tradition. To Catherine, what she had witnessed inside that vault wasn't inheritance, but burden. For Camilla, however, it was betrayal on a monumental scale. If the crown of integrity truly signified divine continuity, then being excluded from it meant more than personal rejection. It meant the monarchy itself no longer recognized her as its moral anchor. For centuries, the British crown had balanced between the weight of legacy and the pressure of reform. But now, with one discreet act behind sealed doors, that balance had been broken. The monarchy found itself split between 2 worlds, one rooted in its sacred past, and another desperate to rewrite it. Old loyalties began to resurface, quiet alliances forming beneath the veneer of civility. Behind the gilded doors of Windsor, tradition had risen from the shadows, and it demanded allegiance. But as old relics resurfaced, one item in particular would ignite a firestorm that no royal PR team could extinguish. It began with a photograph blurry, quickly deleted, yet impossible to forget. Catherine's hand, adorned with an unfamiliar blue sapphire ring, appeared on a private charity post. The ring's design matched the one historians confirmed was locked in the royal vault for over a century. The post vanished within minutes. But for Camilla, that moment confirmed everything. The vault had spoken, and it hadn't chosen her. The image spread like wildfire before the palace could contain it. Social media accounts reposted, analysed, and magnified every pixel of Catherine's hand, comparing it to old royal catalogues and archived sketches. The sapphire, described by historians as the Stone of Truth, was said to have been commissioned by Queen Mary as a symbol of divine wisdom and integrity, two virtues she believed every rightful matriarch must embody. And yet, that sacred ring had supposedly been sealed away, never to be worn again. So why was it now gleaming on Catherine's finger? And what did it mean for the hierarchy of the modern monarchy? Within hours, the story became a global phenomenon. Headlines blared with sensational speculation. Catherine breaks tradition with vault sapphire. Secret coronation jewelry leaked. And Camilla's silent rage behind palace doors. Behind the scenes, the royal crisis teams were scrambling to douse the flames. Advisors convened emergency meetings to discuss containment strategies. Statements were drafted, revised, and then abandoned entirely. No one could agree on a version of the truth that wouldn't make the situation worse. The narrative had escaped their control, and for the first time, the institution looked powerless to manage its own myth. For Camilla, the photo wasn't merely a breach of protocol, it was an open wound. The ring's sudden reappearance struck at the heart of everything she feared. That the monarchy's ancient guardians had never truly accepted her. It felt orchestrated, deliberate, as if fate itself was mocking her position. Those closest to her claimed she was inconsolable, pacing the corridors of Clarence's house in disbelief. She demanded answers from Charles, but he, too, was torn. His loyalty to his wife battled against a growing sense of inevitability, that perhaps destiny had already chosen its heir in spirit, and it wasn't the Queen beside him. Meanwhile, Prince Michael of Kent, the man who alone knew the truth about the vault's contents, refused to comment. His silence spoke volumes. In that silence, speculation thrived. Was he protecting Catherine? Was he obeying a royal covenant older than the crown itself? Each unanswered question deepened the mystery and widened the divide between loyalty and legitimacy. Insiders began calling it the Sapphire Silence, a term that would come to define this strange and haunting chapter in royal history. Then, as if summoned by destiny, a forgotten collection of letters from Queen Mary surfaced in an obscure family archive. Within those faded pages lay a passage that shook historians to their core. She had written of the guardian who shall one day carry the stone of truth, not by inheritance, but by grace. Those words, written over a century ago, suddenly seemed prophetic. To the public, it confirmed what many already believed. Catherine was not just a princess. She was the moral heartbeat of the monarchy, chosen not by bloodline, but by virtue. As the frenzy reached fever pitch, the balance of power within the palace began to tremble. Camilla's allies lobbied to suppress the narrative, accusing the media of inflaming ancient superstitions, but their efforts only made the story more irresistible. Public opinion began to tilt decisively. Polls showed growing support for Catherine as the true face of royal integrity. Across the nation, the sapphire became a symbol of purity, resilience, and divine purpose, a reflection of everything people believed the monarchy should represent. Charles found himself trapped between two legacies, the wife he had crowned and the woman his nation had chosen to revere. His silence deepened the fracture. For every day the palace remained quiet, the myth grew louder, unstoppable, untamed. And as the tension reached its peak, something extraordinary happened. A single document, marked confidential, for royal, custodians' eyes only, was leaked to the press. It bore the unmistakable signature of Prince Michael of Kent, and its contents would upend everything the royal household thought it could control. And just when it seemed the tension might calm, an internal royal memo leaked signed by Prince Michael himself, revealing a shocking directive that would change the monarchy's inner hierarchy overnight. The leak stunned the establishment. In an internal document marked "For sovereign eyes only," Prince Michael reaffirmed his ancient right as the royal custodian, a title predating the crown estate itself. The memo declared that access to the vault and its symbols of authority shall remain with those bound by lineage, service, and honor, not ceremony alone. Within hours, Camilla's influence over several ceremonial collections was suspended. The revelation hit the monarchy like a thunderclap. For decades, the role of the royal custodian had been little more than a ceremonial echo, a relic of a time when lineage ruled over law. But now, with the stroke of a pen and a leak that none could trace, Prince Michael had reasserted that authority with chilling precision. The custodian, according to ancient royal doctrine, was the one figure whose power transcended even the reigning monarch when it came to heritage, preservation, and access to the monarchy's most sacred symbols. In short, he was the keeper of legitimacy itself. Senior advisors were divided, torn between loyalty to tradition and fear of its implications. Some argued that Michael's decree was a necessary correction, a safeguard, ensuring that royal artifacts remained in the custody of those who understood their spiritual and historical weight. Others called it an act of quiet rebellion, a deliberate undermining of the Queen's authority under the guise of heritage protection. Behind closed doors, discussions turned fierce. Was the custodian acting within his ancient rights, or was this the first open challenge to Camilla's rule since her coronation? Camilla's aides were quick to respond, releasing carefully crafted statements, labeling the decree as anachronistic and symbolic only. Yet no amount of spin could erase the reality the document bore the custodian's official seal, one recognized by royal statute dating back to the 19th century. The implications were profound. Overnight, several of Camilla's scheduled ceremonial appearances were quietly adjusted, with certain royal collections she once oversaw temporarily withdrawn from her access. For a queen known for her determination to modernize, the humiliation was sharp and deeply personal. At the heart of it all, Catherine's name appeared nowhere in the decree, yet her presence lingered in every whispered conversation. Palace staff noted her quiet visit to the Chapel Royal the morning after the leak. Those who saw her described a woman calm, reflective, yet unmistakably resolute. No public statement was made, no acknowledgement of the unfolding drama, but the symbolism was clear. She was aligning herself not with politics, but with faith and history. It was a move that resonated deeply with the public, who saw in her silence the steadiness that the monarchy seemed to be losing. Prince William's stance remained equally calculated. Outwardly, he maintained his neutrality, avoiding comment or reaction. Yet observers noticed subtle cues, a momentary stillness when the decree was mentioned during engagements, a faint shift in tone when speaking of his uncle. His composure betrayed an inner struggle. Though bound by duty to preserve unity, he understood that the custodian's move had altered the balance of power. In one calculated act, Michael had shifted the monarchy's moral center away from the throne and toward the vault, toward the sacred rather than the sovereign. The document itself was written in the restrained yet unmistakable language of authority. It reaffirmed that the symbols of the crown jewels, regalia, and ancestral heirlooms were not possessions of any individual ruler, but of the monarchy's eternal spirit, and those permitted to safeguard them must be chosen not by favor or title, but by the purity of devotion to crown and country. In those few lines, Prince Michael had drawn a distinction that struck at the heart of the royal divide. Camilla reigned by law, but Catherine, in the eyes of tradition, now embodied the soul of the institution. Outside the palace, public reaction was swift. Commentators praised the decree as a restoration of dignity, a reawakening of royal conscience. Yet within Windsor's walls, the atmosphere grew colder by the hour. The Queen's private secretary was said to have confronted the custodian's office, demanding clarification, only to receive a cryptic response that the decree merely enforces what was always true. For Camilla, it was a reminder that the crown she wore carried weight, but not ownership. Custodian's decree had done more than challenge protocol. It had redefined loyalty not to rank or reign, but to heritage and honor. And though the ink on the document had barely dried, its impact rippled through every corner of the royal household. Prince Michael's decision was not about rebellion. It was about restoration, a reckoning with a truth buried beneath centuries of diplomacy. But the custodian's decree was more than a bureaucratic move. It was a declaration of loyalty, one that drew unseen battle lines within the House of Windsor itself. Behind palace walls, alliances began to fracture. Senior royals whispered of the Vault Divide, a new rift that threatened the monarchy's unity from within. Camilla's camp accused Catherine of orchestrating a coup of symbolism, while Catherine's defenders saw her as the people's true queen. And through it all, Prince Michael remained silent, guarding a truth only he knew one, tied not to jewels, but to an ancient vow. The Prince Michael. Custodian's decree had done more than redraw royal authority. It had split the very soul of the institution. Within weeks, the once carefully balanced hierarchy of the monarchy began to unravel in quiet but visible ways. Courtiers, who once spoke with ease, now measured every word, unsure of where their loyalties were expected to lie. Those loyal to Camilla insisted that the Vault affair was a deliberate attempt to undermine the Queen's standing, a subtle but devastating power play that disguised rebellion behind grace. Catherine's supporters countered with a different belief, that the Vault had revealed destiny, not defiance, and that the true guardian of the monarchy's heart was never chosen by titles, but by worth. Inside Buckingham Palace, tension thickened like a storm cloud refusing to break. What began as private disagreement soon turned into open dissonance. Conversations once filled with duty and protocol now carried tones of accusation and distrust. For the first time in decades, unity, the monarchy's most sacred principle, had become negotiable. Advisors and aides aligned themselves with quiet factions, their loyalty no longer to the crown as a whole, but to the person they believed embodied its truth. To the outside world, the facade of order remained intact, but behind the gilded doors, the family was splintering. The media, ever hungry for turmoil, turned the conflict into a moral battlefield. Headlines framed the feud as Camilla versus Catherine, a war not of crowns, but of conscience. Editorials drew contrasts between the Queen of Ambition and the Queen of the People. Television panels debated symbolism versus sincerity, tradition versus transformation. Public opinion tilted sharply toward Catherine. Her silence, once seen as diplomacy, now appeared as quiet strength. Polls soared in her favor, while Camilla's approval waned with each passing week. Yet the deeper story wasn't being told in headlines, it was unfolding in whispers, inside rooms where the walls themselves had ears. Princess Anne, always the monarch's stoic defender, surprised many by her subtle alignment with Catherine. Though she spoke no words of loyalty, her actions carried unmistakable intent. Her public appearances with Catherine became more frequent, her private counsel to King Charles more measured. To those watching closely, Anne's support was more than familial. It was an endorsement from the monarchy's moral compass. She recognized something in Catherine that reminded her of their mother, a quiet endurance that placed duty above ego. And in that recognition, Anne had made her choice. But not everyone chose sides so easily. Sophie, Duchess of Edinburgh, became the monarchy's unlikely mediator. With her gentle diplomacy, she attempted to soothe the growing divide, urging both camps to remember the crown's greater purpose. She met privately with Camilla, then with Catherine, reminding them that history was watching. Yet, even Sophie could feel the inevitability pressing down. The storm was no longer one she could contain. The monarchy had become a house divided not by hatred, but by belief. Outside the palace, the public's fascination grew into movement. Across Britain, citizens gathered in silent vigils outside Windsor, holding banners that read, "Restore the true crown." It was no longer just gossip, it was sentiment. The people had chosen their symbol, and it wasn't the Queen on the throne. The whispers of the Vault Divide had evolved into a national reckoning, a collective yearning for authenticity in an era that had lost its moral anchor. Charles, weary and heartbroken, watched as his family fractured around him. He had devoted his life to holding the monarchy together, yet now he faced the very collapse he'd always feared. The monarchy's strength had always relied on unity, but now that unity was unraveling thread by thread. Between Catherine's quiet ascension and Camilla's desperate defense of her reign, the crown was no longer the unifying symbol it had once been. It had become the prize in an invisible war. The air in the palace grew heavy with unspoken truths. Every glance, every silence carried implication. The custodian's decree had not only revived forgotten titles, it had awakened forgotten loyalties. The monarchy's greatest battle was no longer external, it was within itself. And though no swords were drawn, the emotional toll was no less devastating. And as the monarchy teetered on the edge of internal collapse, one event forced the truth out of the shadows, a private ceremony in the vault itself. At dusk, under flickering candlelight, Catherine returned to the royal vault. Witnesses later spoke of a quiet, wordless ritual led by Prince Michael, a symbolic passing of guardianship. The diadem, the sapphire, the ring, all were placed before her. No crown, no cameras, no audience. Yet in that silence, the monarchy's soul seemed to realign. It wasn't rebellion, it was restoration. For centuries, the royal vault had been a chamber of secrets, a place where the lineage of faith, honor, and duty was guarded like sacred scripture. Yet on this night, the weight of that legacy shifted. Prince Michael, frail but resolute, fulfilled his final duty as custodian. He invoked an oath that predated even the crown's coronation rites, a vow once written by Queen Victoria herself, that when the spirit of the monarchy faltered, the guardian of purity must rise to renew its heart. To those present, it was not ceremony but destiny unfolding in real time. Catherine knelt before the relics, her hands trembling not from fear, but from the enormity of the moment. The diadem glimmered faintly, its jewels cold and ancient, symbols of the burden she had unknowingly inherited. The sapphire, long called the Stone of Truth, rested beside it, the very gem that had set the modern monarchy ablaze with speculation. And the ring, Queen, Mary's emblem of loyalty, lay between them, a bridge between past and present. Michael's voice broke the silence only once as he uttered the words, "With these, we restore what time forgot." Those nearby said his tone was both solemn and final, as if he were surrendering not just authority, but history itself. Princess Anne and Prince Edward stood among the quiet witnesses. Both understood what this act represented, not the dethroning of a queen, but the reawakening of a crown's conscience. Anne, stoic as ever, gave a subtle nod when Catherine hesitated, a gesture of reassurance that carried generations of duty behind it. Edward, though more reserved, bowed his head in acknowledgement of what was unfolding. The siblings knew they were watching something larger than family. They were witnessing a redefinition of the monarchy's soul. It was not politics, it was legacy. Tears fell down Catherine's face as she whispered the traditional words of acceptance, an oath known only to the custodians chosen. To her, this was not an honor but a calling. She had not sought this role, yet destiny had delivered it to her doorstep. As she lifted the diadem with trembling hands, those present felt the weight of the monarchy's centuries pressing upon her shoulders. It was a moment of quiet surrender, the acceptance of an invisible crown. In the shadows of the chapel, some believed King Charles had been watching. Rumors spread that he stood afar, unseen, his expression marked not by anger but by sorrow. Those who caught a glimpse claimed he looked like a man reckoning with fate, one who understood that this was the moment when bloodline bowed to spirit. He neither interrupted nor blessed the act. He simply watched, as though silently giving his consent to history's course. Camilla's absence was palpable. Her name was never mentioned, yet every courtier felt the weight of it. The Queen's seat remained empty, a symbol of the void that now separated ceremony from conviction. Some saw her absence as defiance, others as defeat. But in truth, it was perhaps mercy, for to witness what occurred that night would have broken her resolve completely. When the ritual ended, Michael placed his signet, the symbol of the custodian, beside the vault's seal. His duty, carried across decades, was complete. Catherine rose with tear-streaked cheeks, her expression unreadable, but her presence unmistakably changed. Something ancient had moved through her that night, not authority, but truth. Those who left the vault carried the same thought. The monarchy had been humbled, and in that humility, reborn. The silence that followed was unlike any before. For the first time, the monarchy felt still, as if history itself had paused to take a breath. But that peace would not last, because when the dawn broke over London, and the vault doors sealed once more, a new command arrived at Buckingham Palace. One signature, one royal seal, one decree, and everything that had been restored in secret was about to be tested in the light of day. But the story didn't end within those stone walls, because the morning after, a single royal order changed everything. When the sun rose over Buckingham Palace, a new royal decree was issued. Queen Camilla's access to royal heirlooms was permanently revoked, pending reclassification. Catherine, meanwhile, was quietly appointed Keeper of Heritage and Integrity. For the first time in generations, the monarchy had chosen lineage over title, heart over hierarchy, and through it all, Prince Michael's parting words echoed like prophecy. The vault always knows the true heir. The announcement came with the calm efficiency of royal procedure, yet its weight was unmistakable. The very institution that had once prided itself on discretion now found itself exposed by destiny's hand. The document, signed by the king himself, was brief, only 3 paragraphs, but its implications were monumental. In it, the Crown formally recognized the position of Keeper of Heritage and Integrity, an ancient but dormant title last recorded in Queen Victoria's archives. With Catherine's name beside it, the monarchy signaled a transformation few had anticipated. For decades, power had been measured in rank and favor, but this decree suggested a new order, one rooted not in position, but in purity of purpose. The news spread faster than the palace could contain it. Across the nation, reactions poured in. For some, it was a shock. For others, a long-awaited act of correction. Crowds gathered outside the gates, holding signs that read, "Legacy Restored" and "The Crown's True Light." Social media overflowed with admiration. Videos replaying Catherine's most recent appearances, now viewed through the lens of prophecy fulfilled. Even those who had once doubted her began to see her as something greater, not a modern princess, but the embodiment of royal integrity reborn. The narrative that had begun in whispers within Windsor now roared across the world. Camilla's silence spoke louder than any denial. Within days of the decree, she withdrew from several upcoming engagements, citing personal reasons. Palace insiders reported that she spent long hours in her private quarters, surrounded by advisors, yet emerging rarely. To some, it was an act of retreat. To others, quiet defiance. Those who knew her best said she had finally come to understand that influence built on ceremony could never outweigh the weight of tradition, not when the heart of the crown had spoken through the vault itself. For King Charles, the decree represented both burden and redemption. Sources close to him described the moment of signing as deeply emotional, a man reconciling with the past while shaping the future. The choice to formalize Catherine's new role was not an act of favoritism, but an acknowledgement of truth. He had seen what the people had seen, the quiet grace, the dignity under fire, the unwavering loyalty that mirrored the late Queen Elizabeth's spirit. In granting Catherine this position, he had done more than realign protocol. He had revived the monarchy's moral foundation. Observers noted how Catherine carried herself in the days that followed, not triumphant, but serene. She neither celebrated nor commented. Her only public appearance came during a visit to a children's hospice, where she spoke softly about the power of kindness to outlast any storm. It was a message that transcended the crown. Those who heard her that day said she seemed lighter, as if a weight had lifted. And standing beside her, Prince William's pride was unmistakable. His silence, long interpreted as restraint, now felt like strategy. He had protected her not from the world, but for the moment, destiny would demand her rise. Within palace walls, courtiers began to notice subtle changes. Portraits long removed from display were quietly restored. Queen Elizabeth's personal emblem, the Lily of Virtue, reappeared on correspondence from the keeper's office. Even the atmosphere within the royal residences seemed different, gentler, as if the walls themselves recognized the restoration of something sacred. The monarchy, long accused of drifting from its core values, had found its balance again, not through spectacle or decree, but through grace. As for Prince Michael, his duty was done. He resigned his custodianship shortly after the ceremony, leaving behind a single sealed letter addressed to the king. Its contents were never revealed, but those who saw Charles read it claimed he closed his eyes and whispered, "Then so it shall be." It was said that Michael's final words before departing Windsor were the same ones he had spoken to Catherine. "The vault never lies." And indeed, it hadn't. The monarchy had endured scandals, fractures, and reformations, yet never had its foundation felt so profoundly redefined. For the first time in living memory, truth had triumphed without the need for confrontation. Catherine's ascension as keeper of heritage and integrity wasn't about power, it was about preservation. The act reaffirmed what the British crown was always meant to represent: continuity, honour, and quiet strength. And as the sun set that evening over Buckingham Palace, the echoes of the vault seemed to hum faintly through history's corridors, a reminder that even in silence, destiny speaks. As the echoes of the vault's doors fade into legend, one truth remains: that power built on legacy will always find its rightful guardian. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and we will see you in the next one.